Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're tackling something that affects, well, all of us really. Executive function.
Exactly.
You know, that mental muscle we use for planning, organizing, basically keeping our lives from, turning into a chaotic mess. And we're going even deeper today to explore what happens when that muscle, well, it isn't quite working as it should, I guess.
Yeah, we're diving into the often misunderstood world of executive dysfunction.
Okay, so executive function, executive dysfunction.
It's something that touches everyone's lives, whether we realize it or not.
Now, I'll admit, the term executive function always makes me picture, a bunch of brain cells in suits having this super serious meeting in my head.
Right.
But on a serious note, what's really going on in our brains when we talk about executive function?
Well, imagine your brain has a command center.
Okay.
And it's primarily located in the frontal lobes, that area right behind your forehead. This command center is responsible for a lot of higher level thinking.
Okay.
Things like setting goals, planning how to achieve them, organizing your time, and even managing those impulsive urges we all get sometimes.
So it's like the control tower for our brains,
Yeah.
making sure everything runs smoothly.
That's a great way to put it. Now, executive dysfunction is what happens when there are glitches in that control tower. And it's not a single disorder, but rather a collection of symptoms that can manifest in different ways.
So we're not talking about a full system crash.
No.
More like a few crucial instruments going offline. What would be some everyday examples of those glitches in action?
Think about those times you completely forget an appointment. Or maybe you start a million projects but struggle to actually finish any. Constantly feeling overwhelmed, struggling to break down large tasks into manageable steps, even difficulty resisting that extra slice of cake. These can all be signs of executive dysfunction.
Okay, now that hits close to home. I'm definitely guilty of starting way too many projects. But this means executive dysfunction isn't just about forgetfulness, it impacts all sorts of daily activities.
Precisely. It can affect our ability to manage time, stay organized, regulate our emotions, and even control our impulses in social situations.
Right.
And while it's often linked to conditions like ADHD, it's crucial to remember that anyone can experience these challenges,
Oh yeah.
especially during times of stress or sleep deprivation.
It's like when you're running on fumes, your brain's control tower might miss a few calls.
Exactly. And to understand those missed calls, we need to delve deeper into what's happening in the brain. As we said, the frontal lobes play a crucial role, but there's this ongoing debate about how it all works.
Oh, a brain mystery. Tell me more.
Well, some researchers believe specific areas within the frontal lobes are responsible for different executive functions. For instance, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which is like the executive assistant of the brain,
Right.
is heavily involved in working memory.
So different departments for different tasks.
Right. But then there's the network theory, which suggests it's less about specific locations and more about how different brain regions communicate and work together as a team. It's like a complex orchestra, with each section contributing to the overall symphony of executive function.
Okay, so it's not just one conductor, but a whole network of musicians making sure the music plays on.
Exactly. And within this intricate network, we have neurotransmitters, the chemical messengers that allow brain cells to communicate.
Right.
One neurotransmitter, in particular dopamine, is like the fuel that keeps those executive functions running.
Dopamine. Isn't that the one we associate with pleasure and rewards?
It is, but its role goes far beyond that. Studies have shown a strong link between dopamine and our ability to plan, focus, and control our impulses.
So if dopamine is low, our executive function might sputter a bit.
You got it. It's not quite that simple, of course.
Right.
But dopamine signaling plays a crucial role. And this is particularly relevant in conditions like ADHD, where dopamine regulation is often a key factor.
That makes a lot of sense. But let's connect this back to real-life behaviors. How does this brain stuff, the dopamine, the frontal lobes, actually show up in someone's daily life?
Let's look at the work of Russell Barkley, a prominent researcher in ADHD and executive function. He emphasizes the importance of response inhibition.
Response inhibition. Is that like having good self-control?
Exactly. It's the ability to hit the pause button on our impulses, to think before we act. Barkley suggests that difficulties with response inhibition are central to ADHD, contributing to challenges with self-control and emotional regulation.
So someone with good response inhibition might think twice before saying something they'll regret, whereas someone struggling with it might blurt it out.
Precisely. And Barkley's research connects this back to our brain network. He suggests ADHD might involve a developmental delay in the frontal lobes, that brain region crucial for executive function.
So their control tower is still under construction, even though they're expected to, direct traffic. That's got to be incredibly frustrating.
It absolutely can be. And this delay can manifest in those everyday struggles we talked about earlier. For example, working memory. That mental sticky note system might be like a faulty one, leading to forgotten instructions or misplaced belongings.
Their brain's filing system needs a serious upgrade.
Exactly. And this can extend to other areas too. Planning, organizing, prioritizing those essential skills can become major hurdles. It's not about laziness, but a brain wired a bit differently, making those everyday tasks feel monumental.
And then there's attention and concentration. We all struggle with distractions, but for someone with executive dysfunction, it's amplified, right?
Absolutely. Their brains might be less effective at filtering out irrelevant information, making it incredibly tough to stay on track.
Yeah.
Especially during tasks requiring sustained focus.
Like trying to read a book while a marching band parades through your living room.
You said it. And then there's the emotional roller coaster.
Oh, good boy.
Everyone feels emotions, but regulating them effectively is key.
Right.
But for someone struggling with executive function, it can feel like their emotions are on high alert,
Yeah.
making them more prone to intense reactions or difficulty bouncing back from setbacks.
It's like their emotional volume knob is stuck on high. That must be exhausting to deal with day in and day out.
It absolutely can be. And it emphasizes the importance of understanding that these challenges are rooted in brain function,
Right.
not character flaws.
Of course.
But it's crucial to remember that executive dysfunction isn't limited to ADHD.
Right. You mentioned it can be a factor in other conditions as well.
Yes.
So what are some other areas where we might see executive dysfunction playing a role?
One that immediately comes to mind is schizophrenia.
Schizophrenia. That's a serious mental illness. How does executive function factor in there?
Schizophrenia is complex, but a key feature is fragmented thinking. Essentially, difficulty connecting thoughts in a logical, coherent way. And this directly impacts executive function, especially memory.
So it's like trying to solve a jigsaw puzzle when half the pieces are missing.
Exactly. And this isn't just about forgetting facts. It even impacts their working memory, making it extremely challenging to hold on to information long enough to process it.
Wow.
Imagine trying to follow a recipe when you can't remember the previous step.
Talk about frustrating. And multitasking must feel impossible.
You're right, even switching between two simple tasks can feel overwhelming. And similar to ADHD, response inhibition is also a major challenge in schizophrenia, making it hard to control impulses or filter out distractions.
So they're battling on multiple fronts with their thoughts, their impulses, and their ability to hold on to information.
Exactly. And executive dysfunction presents unique challenges in autism spectrum disorder, or ASD as well. One of the key differences is in an area called fluency, which refers to the ability to generate new ideas and think flexibly.
So while they might excel at focusing on details, brainstorming or coming up with different solutions might be more difficult.
Precisely. It's like their thinking might be more structured and routine-oriented. This can impact planning and organization too, making it tough to break down tasks or anticipate obstacles.
That makes sense. And then there's bipolar disorder. We know it involves those intense mood swings, but how does executive function fit into that picture?
Well, while mood is a defining characteristic, research shows that even between episodes, individuals with bipolar disorder often face executive function challenges.
So even when they're not riding the mood roller coaster, their executive functions might still be struggling.
Exactly. Strategic thinking, a cornerstone of executive function, can be impaired.
Right.
Making sound judgments, weighing consequences, learning from past experiences, these can be ongoing struggles.
It's like their internal compass isn't always reliable, making it hard to navigate decisions.
Very apt analogy. And inhibitory control, that ability to hit the brakes, can also be weak, leading to impulsive behaviors, especially during periods of mania.
So executive dysfunction adds another layer of complexity to an already challenging condition.
Absolutely. And to round out our exploration of other conditions, let's touch on Parkinson's disease.
Parkinson's, I thought that primarily affected movement.
It does, but it's not just about the physical symptoms. Parkinson's also impacts cognitive function, including, you guessed it, executive abilities.
So on top of the physical challenges, their brains are facing a whole other battle.
Exactly. Parkinson's disrupts dopamine production, and remember, We talked about how crucial dopamine is for executive function.
Right? It's like the oil that keeps the engine running. So low dopamine equals cognitive hiccups.
Precisely. This can show up as difficulty with working memory, planning, even attention.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to remember instructions, make decisions, or focus when your brain's dopamine levels are depleted. It's a lot to manage.
Wow, it sounds incredibly challenging. It's clear that executive dysfunction can manifest in diverse ways across a range of conditions.
Yeah.
But before we move on to strategies for coping and support, I'm curious about the broader impact of these challenges. How does executive dysfunction actually affect people's lives, their relationships, their work, their education?
That's a crucial question because executive dysfunction doesn't exist in isolation. It has this ripple effect, really, that can touch every facet of a person's life.
Right.
Let's take education, for example. Think about a student trying to navigate a classroom. They're bombarded with information. They're expected to stay organized, manage their time, and follow, multi-step instructions.
Yeah.
Now, for a student grappling with executive dysfunction, this can be incredibly overwhelming.
It's like trying to drink from a fire hose. So much information coming at them, but their brains aren't quite equipped to process and organize it all effectively. What happens to these students?
They might struggle to keep up with note-taking, forget assignments, or find it incredibly difficult to sit still and focus for extended periods.
Right.
This can lead to academic difficulties, frustration,
Yeah.
and even a sense of feeling inadequate, which is absolutely not the case.
It's heartbreaking to think of these students feeling like they're falling behind when in reality their brains are just wired differently. And those challenges don't just disappear when they finish school, do they?
Unfortunately not. Executive dysfunction can significantly impact a person's career trajectory as well.
So let's talk about the workplace. How might these challenges play out in a professional setting?
Well, imagine the typical demands of a job. Meeting deadlines, managing projects, communicating effectively with colleagues, organizing tasks, prioritizing responsibilities. All of these require a high level of executive functioning.
And for someone with executive dysfunction, these seemingly ordinary tasks can become major hurdles.
Precisely. They might miss deadlines, struggle to stay organized, find it challenging to stay focused during meetings, or have difficulty managing their workload effectively.
Leading to stress, anxiety, and even job insecurity.
Absolutely. And it's not just their professional lives that are affected. Relationships can also be strained by executive dysfunction.
Let's unpack that a bit. How might executive dysfunction impact someone's interactions with friends, family, and romantic partners?
Impulsivity can be a major challenge. We've talked about how individuals with executive dysfunction might struggle to control impulsive urges, whether it's saying something they later regret or acting without thinking through the consequences.
Right. It's like their internal filter isn't functioning quite right, and their thoughts and actions don't always align.
Exactly. And this can lead to misunderstandings, hurt feelings, and conflicts in relationships.
Yeah.
They might also struggle with emotional regulation, making it harder to navigate disagreements or stressful situations calmly.
So even if their intentions are good, their actions might not always reflect that, which can be frustrating for both them and the people they care about.
Absolutely. This can create a cycle of guilt, shame, and even social isolation, as they might start avoiding social situations to prevent these uncomfortable encounters.
It's a vicious cycle. Their executive function challenges impact their relationships, which in turn can exacerbate their anxiety and make it even harder to manage their executive function. It's a lot to grapple with.
Yeah.
And as if those challenges weren't enough, you mentioned earlier that executive dysfunction could even be connected to criminal behavior in some cases.
That's right. It's important to address this aspect as well. While it certainly doesn't mean everyone with executive dysfunction will engage in criminal activity, research has shown a correlation between executive dysfunction, particularly in the areas of impulse control and planning, and an increased risk of certain behaviors.
So it's not a direct cause, but more like a contributing factor that might make it harder for some individuals to make sound judgments, resist those impulsive urges, or fully consider the long-term consequences of their actions.
Exactly. For instance, individuals with significant challenges in these areas might be more susceptible to peer pressure, engage in riskier behaviors, or struggle to manage anger effectively in heated situations.
It's a complex issue with serious implications. It's clear that executive dysfunction isn't just my minor inconvenience. It's a significant challenge that can have far-reaching consequences in many areas of a person's life. So with a deeper understanding of these challenges and their impact, let's shift gears to a more hopeful note. What can be done? Are there ways to improve executive function or at least manage the symptoms effectively?
Absolutely. There are a number of strategies and interventions that can be helpful.
Okay.
But before we dive into those, it's essential to emphasize that the first step is always seeking a formal diagnosis.
Okay, so diagnosis is key. But why is that so important in addressing executive dysfunction?
Well, as we've discussed, executive dysfunction can be a symptom of various underlying conditions.
Right.
A proper diagnosis helps pinpoint the root cause, which guides treatment accordingly.
So it's not about labeling someone, but rather getting to the bottom of what's driving these challenges to provide the most effective support.
Exactly. Now, depending on the diagnosis, several treatment options are available.
Okay.
For conditions like ADHD, medication can play a significant role in managing symptoms.
So medication is on the table. What kind of medications are typically used for executive dysfunction, particularly for ADHD?
The most commonly prescribed medications for ADHD are stimulants, such as methylphenidate and amphetamine-based medications.
Stimulants, that seems a bit counterintuitive. Wouldn't stimulants make someone with ADHD even more hyperactive and distractible?
It might seem counterintuitive, but stimulants can actually have a paradoxical effect for individuals with ADHD. They work by increasing the levels of dopamine and norepinephrine in the brain, which, as we discussed earlier, are crucial for executive function.
So it's like giving their brains a boost of those essential neurochemicals they may be lacking.
Exactly. By increasing dopamine and norepinephrine, stimulants can improve attention, focus, impulse control, and overall executive function.
That's incredible. But what about individuals who might not be comfortable with medication or for whom medication alone isn't sufficient? Are there other options available?
Absolutely. Psychosocial treatments are also very effective for managing executive dysfunction.
Okay, psychosocial treatments. Can you give me some examples?
Psychosocial treatments encompass a wide range of therapies and interventions that focus on changing behaviors, developing coping mechanisms, and building skills to compensate for executive function challenges.
Can you give us some specific examples?
For children with ADHD, a very effective approach is behavioral parent training, or BPT.
Behavioral parent training, what does that involve?
BPT equips parents with the tools and strategies to help their children manage their ADHD symptoms. It involves teaching parents how to set clear expectations, create structure and routine, utilize positive reinforcement, and effectively manage challenging behaviors.
So it's like giving parents a crash course in ADHD management so they can be the best possible support system for their child.
Exactly. And for adults with ADHD, other helpful psychosocial treatments include mindfulness training and cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT.
Mindfulness and CBT, those are both popular approaches for a range of mental health challenges. How do they apply specifically to executive dysfunction?
Mindfulness training helps individuals develop a heightened awareness of their thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations in the present moment. This heightened awareness can be incredibly valuable for managing impulsivity, reducing stress, and improving emotional regulation.
So it's about training the mind to be more present and less reactive to every passing thought or urge.
Precisely. And CBT focuses on identifying and changing negative thought patterns and behaviors that contribute to those executive function challenges.
So it's about rewiring those mental pathways that lead to procrastination, impulsive decisions, or difficulty with organization.
Exactly. CBT empowers individuals to develop more effective coping mechanisms, improve problem-solving skills, and build self-confidence in their ability to manage their executive function challenges.
These all sound like promising approaches. Are there any other specific interventions that might be helpful for addressing executive dysfunction?
One particularly effective intervention, especially for individuals with acquired brain injury, is goal management training, or GMT.
Goal management training, what's the focus of that approach?
GMT is a structured program that helps individuals break down goals into smaller, more manageable steps.
Okay.
It teaches them how to plan, organize, prioritize, and monitor their progress towards their goals.
So it's like providing a mental roadmap to navigate the often overwhelming process of setting and achieving goals, something many people with executive dysfunction struggle with.
Exactly. GMT can be incredibly empowering, helping individuals regain a sense of control and accomplishment in their lives.
This is all so encouraging. It's great to know that many different avenues for support and improvement exist when it comes to executive dysfunction.
Absolutely. I think it's important to remember that everyone's journey is unique. What works for one person might not work for another. It's about finding the right combination of strategies and interventions that best fit their individual needs and preferences.
That's such a crucial point. There's no one-size-fits-all solution when it comes to executive function. Tailoring the approach to the individual is key. It's about finding what works and recognizing that this is a journey, not a destination. It's an ongoing process of learning, adapting, and discovering what strategies best support their individual needs, I guess.
Precisely. And I think it's important to shift the narrative here. We've been focusing on the challenges, but there's this growing body of research really highlighting the strengths and advantages associated with certain executive function profiles.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's not just about deficits, but also about unique advantages. Tell me more.
For example, some studies suggest individuals with ADHD might possess heightened creativity, a knack for out-of-the-box thinking, and a remarkable ability to hyper-focus on tasks that truly capture their interest.
So their brains might be wired for a different kind of brilliance.
Exactly. Neurodiversity isn't just about challenges. It's about recognizing the unique strengths and perspectives that enrich our world. It's about shifting our perspective from limitations to possibilities.
That's a powerful message. It's about embracing differences and celebrating the unique contributions everyone brings to the table.
Absolutely. And it's about fostering environments of understanding, acceptance, and support for those who might experience the world, well, a bit differently.
This has been a fascinating deep dive into the world of executive function. We've gone from understanding what executive functions are and how our brains create them to exploring the diverse ways they can impact our lives. And importantly, we've highlighted hopeful strategies for coping and improvement. It's been quite a journey.
It certainly has. And I hope our listeners have gained valuable insights into this often misunderstood topic.
I know I have. One of the key takeaways for me is that executive dysfunction isn't, a sign of weakness or laziness. It's a neurological challenge that deserves understanding and support.
Mm-hmm.
It's about empowering individuals, not blaming them.
I couldn't agree more. And for those listening who resonate with this conversation, I encourage you to explore the resources mentioned in the show notes. There's a wealth of information available to help you better understand your own executive function profile and discover strategies that can empower you to thrive.
That's so important. Knowledge is power, after all. And remember, you're not alone on this journey.
By fostering a greater understanding of executive function, we can create a more inclusive and supportive world for everyone.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'd love to hear your thoughts, share your insights, experiences, or any questions you might have in the comments below. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep embracing the fascinating world within you and around you.
Remember to like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the Daniel David Allen YouTube channel, where RoboCast is posted every weekday. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.